You know, one of the things that I've found has been a real common thread in my work with Australian and Tasmanian school leaders has been the notion that they believe that central to their core business is building community. It's building stronger connections between what the strategic purposes of the school and getting our parent community on side so that they perhaps provide support rather than resistance to what we're trying to do or what we're trying to change. And I would contend to you that that's important, that it's really good and it's a fantastic thing to do, because I think the relationship between home and school has been somewhat altered over the last few decades. We're not quite so collegiate and trusting in our work, and perhaps a little bit more adversarial and blameful in our work. What we want to do is to redress that. It stands to reason. I would contend to you also, though, that a lot of the work that we do in that space has become too formal. So what we do when we're looking to try and improve community is we want to get our parent peak bodies organised. So we get our school council up and running and functioning, and we disseminate information through them and we have decisions ratified by them. Or if we're looking to do something a little more informal, what we might do is run a community event. So there might be a fete or a sausage sizzle or a concert or something like that that we use to try and bring people together to build that sense of community. I think what we're doing when we fall for the trap of being too formal about community is we're forgetting what community is. In fact, I would contend to you that if we were going to define what community is, I would say that it's just a collective of relationships. Now, it's just a big ball of relationships that are kind of stuck together either by geography or purpose, and in school, it's a little bit of both. And then we might actually go a little deeper than that. So we're working from the broad to the very specific here, down into what's a relationship. Now, relationships can be forced in that we're kind of born into certain relationships without being able to choose them. But as we get older, we get a little bit more discerning. And what we choose is to be in relationships only where the interactions are positive. So a relationship is kind of just a collective of interactions. And it's much better for us if those interactions are positive. So we're looking for environments where the relationships are friendly, but also where they're regular, where they're ongoing, where they're kind of ritualized. And I think that's where our imperative is in schools, and that's where we can get a fantastic little bit of traction. It's by thinking about what are the mechanisms in our school for people to meet, to interact regularly, informally, easily, without having to go and get on a bus where they already are. How can they do that in a really comfortable and positive kind of way? I know that for some primary schools, for instance, there's a challenge in getting parents of early childhood students out of the classroom sometimes so that the teachers can get on with their work at the start of the day. Now, you could institute a ban that says to parents you must be out by a certain time. Or you could create a meeting place for them. You could create a VIP lounge, as I've seen in some schools, where we encourage all parents who are still in the school by a certain time to come to the VIP lounge and to pick up a free cup of tea and a Scotch finger biscuit. You could also do things like, I know that a fabulous principal that I worked with was very clear on how we could create as many informal positive interactions with parents as he possibly could, and that was to be noticed by having a fantastically enormous sombrero on his head at the start of the day, and all he would do was do yard duty for 15 minutes at the start of the day at the crossing, and he knew that he could catch a huge volume of people and just have an informal, habitualised, ritualised opportunity to be able to connect with people in a really positive way. I know another secondary school that just has a 15-minute principal chat zone where one of the school leaders, either a principal or an assistant principal in that school, hangs about at the start of the day. So if a parent is dropping a student off, they might decide, instead of just pulling up and running away, they might decide to park the car and step over to this area where they know a school leader will be, and they're there just to chat. They're there just to have conversations. And it's the focus on the informal rather than the formal that is building better relationships in that school. And as a result, what they're starting to get is a stronger sense of community, and that's being borne out in their parent perception data too. So instead of focusing on community and how we can get community, let's say what's community? It's about relationships. What are relationships about? They're about interactions. And what we need to do is to start to say, how is our context, how is our school as an environment contributing to the highest possible number of informal, positive, ritualised interactions between people? Then I think we're getting serious about community.